All right, so we are officially streaming on YouTube, so this is being recorded. So welcome everybody to our second workshop here at Emerald Academy. Today we're going to be talking about how to build a basic DApp. Now, yes, Raven, thank you. So today we're not going to be learning too many complicated things. Actually, um, this workshop is basically going to tell you the very basics of the Flow FCL library, which is basically the Flow client library. Um, so the Flow client library is a way for you to interact with the Flow blockchain in JavaScript. So I'm gonna teach you how to basically get like a local emulator running and a basic DApp that is reading from your local emulator. And then towards the end of the video, we're gonna transition to how to deploy a contract on testnet and then how to interact with a contract on testnet from our DApp. But just sort of like a disclaimer, this workshop is not going to be how to build like a really beautiful DApp or how to build like a really nice, like pretty looking whatever. It's going to look like really terrible, but the point of the workshop is to show you how to interact with the blockchain. Um, in addition to that, we're going to be using Svelte for our front end framework. I was wondering if I should choose between React or Svelte. The truth is that I am a much bigger fan of Svelte. I actually kind of dislike React and Next.js. However, for those of you that do like to code in Next.js and React, that is totally fine. And all the concepts that we're going to learn today, you're going to be able to apply to React very easily. It's almost the exact same code, so don't worry about that. And in addition, at the end of the video, I'll give you examples of like live working React applications from our academy, so that should help you out. Okay, so in order to actually start our Svelte project, I'm just going to look up Svelte. I think it's called like start a new Svelte project. And yeah, so I'm pretty sure, yeah, we're just going to copy and paste this command. This is called npm create svelte at latest my app. For those of you that have never heard of Svelte before, it's basically like a really, I think it's a lot simpler than React. It's essentially just HTML, JavaScript, and CSS put together, but with no like JSX syntax. So it's just straight up, plain HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and it makes it very easy for us. So let's go ahead and put npm create svelte, and then let's call this a test app, and run that. So it's going to ask us, do we want like a little demo? This is helpful if you're trying to learn Svelte. I'm just going to make a skeleton project, which just means very simple, like very bare bones project. We're not going to add any extra features to it, so we're just going to put no for all these things, and then boom, it already does, it creates the project. You can actually cd into our test dapp folder, and now we're inside our folder, and we can run npm install in order to install all of our dependencies for the project. And on my other terminals here, I'm just going to cd into test app as well, because we're going to be playing around with this a couple terminals here. So let's get prepared on the other side. Cool. So once it npm installs, let's actually open up this code in VS Code. So here is the code now in VS Code. And it's again, it's pretty simple. There's not that much here. The only real folder you should be looking at is the source folder. And this has a roots folder, which has one file in it, and it's just page.svelte. So if we go ahead and run npm run dev in our terminal, this is going to start our project. And if we actually head to this URL here, let's open up our Chrome and let's head to this URL. We're going to see that it's a very basic application, right? It just says welcome to SvelteKit, whatever, all these random links. And what we can actually do is let's go in here and just get rid of everything and put one h1 tag that just says welcome, right? And if we save that and go back to our page, it just says welcome. So super simple, right? We just added one little welcome and then that was it. So this is just plain HTML. Now, inside of each of these files, inside of a Svelte file, you can put basic HTML, and then you can also put what's called like a little style element, and you can put just normal CSS inside of here. So if I wanted to put like color red, you'll notice that if I save this file, now it's red, right? So this is the great thing about Svelte, in my opinion, is the HTML and CSS is super simple. There's no like complicated files you have to manage or anything like that. And it's just basic HTML and CSS. And even better is that this CSS is scoped to this component. So if we made other files with other CSS, they wouldn't get combined or mixed between them. So it's awesome. But anyways, let's get rid of that for now, and let's just make it black again. That way it looks pretty normal. Cool. So let's just dive right into working with the at on flow slash FCL library. So if we actually stop this for a second, we can npm npm install at on flow slash FCL. Okay. And this is going to basically install the Flow client library, which is again, it's JavaScript code to allow us to interact with the blockchain. Now let's go ahead and start our application again. And one more thing that you'll need, by the way, if you don't have this already, is the Flow CLI. So I'll send this link in the chat here. But the Flow CLI is essentially a way for us to be able to run a local emulator on our computer. So if you haven't already, go ahead and install the Flow CLI. It's going to be very helpful for you. And if you're on Windows, you literally just copy this command and paste it in a terminal. Or if you're on Linux, I would just copy, this command as well. Or if you're on Mac, I always prefer to use this one line instead of using Homebrew, but you can use either one that you want. Um, cool. So yeah, so let's first talk about how to log in, right? Because I think I think logging in is probably the first step, right? We want a user to be able to log into our application. Let's go ahead and do that. So what we're gonna do here is we're gonna in our source folder, we're gonna make a folder called lib that stands for library, and then in the lib folder we're gonna make two more folders. One is called actually let's just call it uh, flow store, and the other file we're going to call is actions.js. So these are two different files here. In FlowStore, this is going to be all of our Svelte stores. Now, again, if you haven't coded in Svelte before, a store is basically just like it's just a variable that's managing data across your application. So this is going to end up having just one variable in it called user that's just going to keep track of our user, like who's logged in, all that kind of stuff. And it's actually very simple. We can just say export const user equals writable, and then that's pretty much it. So writable just means you're creating a store in Svelte, and it just is saying that you can actually like change. Writable just means you can change this variable. So if I log in, it'll change the user to be whoever is logged in, and if I log out, it'll change user to be whoever is logged out. So pretty simple stuff in Svelte as well. And now in actions, what we're going to do is this is where we're going to handle all of our flow actions. So for example, logging in or sending a script. So all of our flow actions. So for example, logging in, sending a script, executing a transaction, etc. So tons of stuff we can do in here. So let's first just manage how to log in. So let's say const authenticate equals an async function where we're going to say await FCL, and we actually have to import FCL. So import, I usually say all as FCL, await FCL dot authenticate, and it's that simple. So this right here is going to allow us to log in to our application. So the next step, believe we might actually get some errors. Okay, we haven't gotten errors yet, but we will in a second here. But the next step is we actually have to, run a local emulator on our computer to be able to log in, right? Because right now it doesn't know what it's logging into. We could be logging in on testnet, on mainnet, but we want to log into a local emulator. So let's make another file called config. And this file is going to allow us to configure our application and tell FCL where we are looking. So are we looking on mainnet? Are we looking on testnet? That kind of thing. So let's go ahead and import FCL again. And we're going to say fcl.config. And this is what you need in order to configure your application. And now I'm actually, because some of this stuff gets a little confusing, what I'm actually going to do is say dot put. And you need two things. One is an access node.api, and we're going to make a variable up top. Actually, let me go ahead and copy and paste these two in. And also, for the record, I'm going to post all this source code after the workshop is over in case you need it. But I just pasted these 4 lines here. This is for the emulator, and this is for testnet. So we're going to put access node here, and then we're also going to dot put what's called the discovery wallet. So this is going to tell FCL, what wallet we're listening to. So are we listening to Blockdo wallet, Dapper wallet, our local wallet, stuff like that. So discovery.wallet, and then we're gonna put discovery wallet. So on the emulator, we're telling FCL to look at our local emulator and then our local wallet. Whereas when we go to testnet, we're going to tell the FCL to look at the testnet blockchain, and then Discovery Wallet is going to be essentially what's FCL Discovery is a whole list of wallets on Flow. It could be Blockdo, Dapper Wallet, all like it's basically every different wallet on Flow wrapped into one like Discovery endpoint. So in case that's helpful. Cool. So this will help us configure our application. Any questions so far, by the way? We're gonna get into like the whole locking in thing in a second here, but I just want to know if there's any questions along the way. Yeah, so you can set the list of wallet yourselves too. So what you can do is like there are certain endpoints for certain wallets. Like you can make an endpoint for like you can just specifically say I only want Blockdo or I only want Dapper. That's totally fine. Discovery is going to be all of them combined, but I believe actually in the Discovery document, like in the docs, there's a way for you to filter through some of the wallets and not show them. But I would have to look into the docs for that. I'm not exactly sure how to do that. Yeah, of course. All right. So now what we're going to do is we're gonna have to run our emulator in our terminal. So the way to start a local terminal is to say, well, first of all, actually, in order to start a emulator, we actually have to run flow init, which means initialize a new flow project. And you'll see that actually, if I go to run, when I go to run this code, a flow.json file is going to appear on the left side of my application. So if I run flow init, you'll see that, oh, on the left-hand side here, a flow.json file appeared. Is add flow slash FCL available for TypeScript as well? I am not actually sure of that. I'm not sure. But you can, like, yeah, if you wanted to, like, use TypeScript, I believe you could, but I'm not sure if it's available. No, I don't know. The only reason I don't know is because I don't use TypeScript myself, but maybe Tech would know. Yeah, I think it does already work with TypeScript anyway, so it should be fine. Yeah. Okay, cool. So after I ran flow init, um, my flow.json file appeared. Now, a flow.json file, you're gonna need this in order to run anything flow related. Like if you want to start an emulator or start a dev wallet, you need a flow.json in your project. So let's go ahead and usually we'll get more into flow.json later in this workshop. We talk about like deploying what's it called? When we talk about like deploying our contract to testnet, we're gonna really need to configure our flow.json file. But for now, we just need to have it here in order to start an emulator. So let's go ahead and run flow emulator start, and then I always put a -v flag because that's gonna allow us to see like little like logs in our terminal when we log stuff. So let's press enter. That's gonna start a terminal, and then in our other terminal, we're gonna run flow dev dash wallet, and that's going to start our local wallet. Okay. So what we're going to do now is after welcome, we're going to make a little button here, and we're going to say log in. And in order to log in, we're going to make an on-click handler, which is just going to say when this button is clicked. That's all this means. When this button is clicked, what function we want to run? We want to run authenticate, and we need to import authenticate from our actions file. So the script here, and we're going to say import authenticate from uh, lib/actions.js. Right, we're importing this the authenticate function. We need to export it um, in order to be able to call this. All right. So let's that cool. So now we have a button to call authenticate. So let's actually see how this goes. Now, yes. So now we're gonna get the error here. So this error, I actually just posted a YouTube video on this, but it says reference error global is not defined. So sometimes when you're working with Svelte, actually, I think this is like a Svelte specific error. you need to configure your svelte.config, or no, your vite.config.js. I actually have another application here open on my computer to help solve this issue, where essentially all you have to do is add this code, um, just like this resolve here, and it just swaps out like a library inside of FCL, just because for some reason it's buggy with Svelte. I'm not sure why. And then on top of that, we just need to also install isomorphic fetch. So if you ever run into this problem, you just have to add this piece of code, and then in your package.json, also install isomorphic fetch. So if we go here and npm install, it should be done super quick, and we can start it again. Should be good to go. Hopefully, fingers crossed. And we are. Perfect. All right, we got rid of the error. Let's try logging in. So let's go ahead and click login. And oh, we actually get an okay, yeah. So look at this. So we get an error. It says if no service is passed to authenticate, whatever, whatever. Basically, this error just means that it for some reason it's not looking at our config. And the reason for that actually is because in our actions.js folder, we forgot to import our config. So if we import our config here that we just set, remember it's like telling FCL where to look for our emulator and wallet. We import that into our actions, we should be good to go. So if we refresh again and click login, we should get a little dev wallet. So this dev wallet is running from our local computer, right? So super awesome stuff. So we can click on, let's just say account A, and then nothing happens, right? So we want to make it so that something cool happens. So let's go ahead and do that together. So what we can do is inside, let's get rid of some files here because we don't need some. Inside our page.svelte, what we're going to do is we're going to say welcome, and then we want to put the user's address. So the way to do that is we actually have to import the user object. So let's import user from lib/flow store. And this is, again, this is coming from our flow store. So remember, we have this user object that we want to be set every single time a user logs in. So we can say welcome, and then the way to read a store in Svelte is to put a little money sign, user, and then dot address. We're gonna okay, so user dot address, and we're going to refresh the page, and we're getting a little error here. And I believe the reason for that is because we need to, in our actions, every time the page is refreshed, we want to save the information to the user. We can actually put this, and I'll get rid of the comments, so it actually looks a lot simpler. We also have to what is it? Import user from flow store, and also we have to import browser, which I believe is import browser from app/environment, right? And what this will do is every time the page is refreshed, it'll set the user store to the current user that's logged in through FCL. So I think, all right, we're still getting issues. Is not exactly oh, I see. It's because in here the user object is undefined, and so when we access address on it, nothing's happening. So what we can do actually is have a little if statement here in Svelte that says if the user is logged in, then let's say welcome user, or if the user is currently logged out, then let's say please log in. So what we can do is say if user got logged in, and the user object always comes with like a logged in, logged out, or if you're like logged in true or false. So it'll have this for us. So if the user is logged in, we can say welcome, right? Otherwise, which in Svelte is just else, we can put a button that says log in. And let's also just put like an H1 here that says please log in. See if this works. No. What am I doing wrong here? I know what I'm doing wrong. So inside the Flowster here, what we can do is we can give the user some initial state that just says logged in is false. So even if no one has logged in ever, it'll at least it'll have logged in false. That way it's not going to say, oh, it's undefined or something in here. So hopefully this should do it. Yeah, here we go. So welcome, and then the address. And so just for the record, what this piece of code, I know I like skipped over this. If we comment this code out, look at what happens. So when we refresh the page, it loses track of the state. So if we put this piece of code here, the if browser, then what's going to happen is even when we refresh the page, it'll maintain the user state. So there we go.
Yeah, thank you.
Welcome, and then the address of the user. Pretty cool. And we can make another function called unauthenticate async. And it's pretty similar. We can say await fcl dot unauthenticate, right? And then inside of our page here, we can have a button where when we click it, it says log out, and we have an on-click handler that says, God, I can't type, unauthenticate. So we can click this button to log out. Now it says please log in. We can log in with this account maybe. Now it says welcome this address. Log out again, log in. Maybe we want to create a new account that's called Raven. We can create. Oh, maybe the dev wallet's broken. All right, never mind. The dev wallet is broken. But we do have these two accounts at least. I gotta tell the flow team they broke. Covering bugs. But cool. No Raven account? Yeah, you don't get an account. I think the dev wallet's probably just broken. I remember someone else mentioning this actually a couple days ago, so probably something I gotta tell them about. Raven's too powerful. Yeah, if you code on Flow long enough, you'll know that the emulator and dev wallet never work at the same time. One of them is always broken. You just have to. It depends which one. Okay, cool. By the way, I'm curious in the chat here, who is completely new to Svelte? If you're like say new to Svelte, so if you're completely new to Svelte, can you thumbs this up? Or if you've seen it before, thumbs it down. Yeah, so everyone's completely new to it. So I'm curious, what does some of you think of it just at this point? Also, I forgot to mention that, like, isn't it cool, by the way? Oh, you only do backend slash DevOps? Oh, nice. I see. Yeah, no, I think it's awesome to learn Svelte as your first front-end framework. It just makes everything a lot easier. You can see here that one of the cool things about Svelte also is that there's really easy like inline JavaScript. So in React, you would have to do like, some annoying like statement in JSX. In Svelte, you can literally just say if the user's logged in, do this HTML, else do this HTML. So it's super simple in Svelte, I think. And I also love the scope styling here. Okay, so we just logged in. That's pretty cool. Now let's go back to our and by the way, this was all the complicated part. So the logging in, logging out, that's like the most complicated stuff. So we got past the most complicated aspect. What we're gonna do now is we're gonna add another action and we're gonna run a script. So if you came to our cadence session yesterday, you will understand this. Honestly, it's pretty easy stuff. But even if you haven't, you'll still be able to get it. So we're gonna make another function called say hello, and this is going to be an async function that just runs a cadence script. So the way to run a cadence script is to say const response equals await fcl.query, and then you pass in an object to fcl.query. And the couple things you need are a cadence um, key, and the cadence is literally just going to be a string of cadence code. So public function main, this is all cadence code at this point. Going to return a string, and we're going to return hello there, and that's it. Then we can just return response. Or actually, let's just console.log response. All right, so again, this is going to actually run cadence code on our local emulator, and it's going to be a little script, and then it's just going to log the response. So if we go to our page here, we can have a button that just says say hello, say hello. Try it. Let's log in, count A, And if we click on say hello, you can see in our console here that if I click say hello, it just logs all that. So it's super cool, right? We're running a script on our local emulator. All right, so now we're running a script. So the next thing I want to do is show you how to run a transaction, although because we don't really have any contracts yet, there's nothing too interesting. But I guess I could show you a little bit. So let's go ahead and run a transaction. Let's say run transaction. And we're going to change this a little bit. So instead of fcl.query, you actually say fcl.mutate. So fcl.query is for a script, and fcl.mutate is for a transaction. We have to change this a little bit. Action. Remember, we have the prepare phase, and then we also have the execute phase. And because we're on a local emulator and I enabled the -v flag in our emulator, we can see logs. So we can actually log in Cadence like hey there. But what I'm going to do to make this example a little bit more exciting is I'm going to pass in a like a user input that's a string. And that way I can show you how to pass in arguments to a transaction or a script. So the way that you pass in arguments, this is the same for both the transaction or a script, is you put args and then this little like function here, arg t, and then you can pass in an array of arguments. So the first one is going to be an arg. Let's say it's uh, hello people, and this is a t.string. So the way you format arguments is you put the actual value of the argument, comma, and then t dot the type of the variable or type of the input. So if it's a string, you put string. If it was like an integer up here, then you would put integer. If it was an address, boom, boom. Say extra s on it, but you get the point. Now for dictionaries and arrays, it's a little bit more. Actually, it's a lot more complicated, but we'll get there eventually. Or I can actually send you some that. All right. So that's how you pass an argument. So we can pass in user input, and then we can just log user input just to see if it's working correctly. Okay. We also have to put for transactions. We have to put a signer, or we have to put a. Oh God, I'm blanking. It's a proposer, which is just fcl.authz. fcl.authz means the currently logged in user. And with transactions, there's three. I guess this is a little strange, but on Flow, transactions have three. I don't know what to call it, like roles. A transaction has three roles. One is a proposer. The proposer is the person that's like starting the transaction. The next person is the payer. This is the person that's paying for the transaction, which is like the gas fees. Although remember, gas fees are like basically like non-existent, so it doesn't like really matter that much. But just know that. And then the last one is what's called the authorizations. Now the authorizations is the important part. This is all the people that are actually authorizing this transaction and that are going to appear in the prepare statement. So if you have an array of authorizations, these are all the auth accounts that's going to appear in the prepare statement. And fcl.authz just means the currently logged in user. So the currently logged in user is going to propose, pay, and authorize this transaction. Cool. And then we're going to console log the response, and that should be some interesting data we can look at. So let's go ahead and make a button that says run transaction. Run transaction. Okay. And let's try it out. So let's refresh the page. Let's run transaction. And when we click that, it actually appears with the transaction modal, and it looks like I did everything right, which is pretty surprising on the first try. So it tells us who the proposer is, the payer is, who the authorizations are, or who the authorizers are, um, and it gives you the arguments. So it looks like we're passing in a string that says hello people, and the cadence code. So if I click approve, it console.logs the transaction ID, which is right what was logged right here. So it logs the transaction ID, and in our terminal, we should see hello people right there. So this is actually coming from the log because we enabled the -v flag. That's right here. No, I remember on test end and mainnet, this doesn't like logs shouldn't be used because you can't really see the logs, but on emulator it's great. Alrighty. That is how you run a basic transaction. Cool. Um, yeah, so what I want to do next is let's actually go to our source folder here, and we're going to make a folder called Cadence. And what I'm going to do in this Cadence folder is make a new contract. So what we're going to do now is, because I showed you how to do this basic stuff on the DApp, sorry, a little bit sick. Because I showed you how to do this basic stuff, we're now going to deploy a contract to testnet, and we're going to try to read and write to our contract on testnet. So let's try it. So in our Cadence folder, let's make a contract called hello world.cdc. .cdc is for Cadence files. And let's just write some contract code. So public contract hello world. I'm not going to spend too much time explaining this contract code because we did that yesterday during our workshop, so you can see that recording. But we're going to have a greeting. That's a string. We're going to have a function to change the greeting, just like so. Self.greeting, new greeting. And then we're going to initialize the greeting to hello Emerald. Thanks, Raven. So this is our basic contract. We just have a greeting field that just is going to store a greeting. We're also going to have a change greeting function that's going to allow us to change the greeting, and then we're going to initialize the greeting when the contract is deployed. Hello Emerald Academy. Okay. So this is where the contract is. Now, we actually have to create a testnet account to be able to deploy the contract to. Remember that on Flow, contracts are deployed to an account. So we have to actually, make a testnet account first. So the way we can do that is, first of all, let's go ahead and stop our emulator. And let's also stop our developer wallet, because we're no longer going to be using this. We're no longer going to be running a local instance. We're going to be using the testnet. Let's run flow accounts create. It's like that, and it actually makes it pretty easy. So we'll press enter, enter account name. We'll call it testnet account. Do we want it on local emulator, testnet, or mainnet? We want it on testnet. And yes, I want to continue. So then it says press enter to open your browser. And what it's going to do is it's actually going to automatically put in the newly created public key for you on the Flow testnet faucet. So we just have to prove that we're a human. Yes, I know it. I don't even know what daisies are. All these ones? I have no idea. Lips in a vase. Okay, let's try that. All right, boom, we're human. Create an account. And it should soon do it. And what's awesome about this command is that once it creates the account, you'll actually notice that inside our application, it automatically configures our flow.json to have a new account called testnet account, and it points to a local file that it just created that contains the newly created testnet account, the private key, all this stuff. It's super easy for you. So if you're managing this in like a GitHub, like a Git repo, you can like git ignore this file, but you can keep your flow.json. So pretty awesome. So now we have a testnet account. Great. And again, it auto configured that for us. So what we can do now is we want to deploy Hello World to our testnet account. So I might struggle with this a little bit because it's been a while since I've tried this manually, but let's do it. So I think we need a contracts object. And inside the contracts object, we actually need to tell our flow.json that a Hello World contract lives at /source/cadence/hello world. And then we can have a deployments object that basically says for testnet, I believe, and then testnet. So we first put the network, which is testnet, then the name of the account we're going to deploy to, which is testnet account, which is getting right here, and we create an array and we pass in the contract name. So we're going to pass in hello world, and it's going to know that hello world is coming from this file because of this that we just configured. So let's go ahead and try this out. Let's run flow project deploy network equal testnet. and let's works. Do a little bit of praying in the chat. Hope this works. Oh, it says all contracts deployed successfully. Cool. So we actually go to this address. Let's go to the testnet view source. So if we go to the view source here, you can go to flowviewsource.com. I'll actually send this in the chat here. This is a super helpful developer resource. You can go to testnet, paste in the account address. Oops. Paste in the account address. And oh, look, we can see our account. We can see our contract on testnet. So look at that. That's awesome. Sweet. Yeah, you could also use this one too. I just got so used to using the testnet one. These. Hey, you can see your we can see our contract now. Woohoo! And now if we go back to our application, let's now configure our application to look at testnet instead. So let's get rid of the emulator stuff here, and let's instead configure for testnet. So what's going to happen is this access node is pointing to testnet, and this discovery wallet URL is now looking to a testnet discovery, which you'll see is a bunch of different wallets. So if I go ahead, let's close out all these files for a sec, and let's close out our application and rerun npm run dev, and we go back to our application. We can log out, and then if we log in, it should come up with all these wallets now. So we can actually click on Blockdo and log in the Blockdo wallet. So you see how simple it was to configure between emulator and testnet? It was literally just changing these two values. So it's incredible how easy it is actually. Pretty cool. So I see that there's a capacity of 0% for our contract mentioned on top left. How does that work? Oh, this one. So what this I believe what's happening here. So the way that storage works on Flow is you need a certain amount of flow in your account. So for example, let's say you have a contract that stores a lot of data in it. You actually need flow inside that account to be able to store that data. So that's how storage is working. What 0% capacity is saying that we've used basically 0% of our storage. So we have 1,000 flow, which means we actually have a lot of storage we can use. Because this is testnet, so it just minted flow to our account. However, this contract is like basically storing no data, so we've used no capacity. Um, However, this concept also applies to a user from the user perspective. So if a user is storing a lot of NFTs that have a lot of data inside them, the user needs to have flow in their account to actually store that data. So that's what that means. And you can also look at the key information. So like this is the public key. Yeah. Yeah, of course. So so now that we're on testnet, we can actually still run say hello, because it's running the script on testnet now, and we can also run this transaction. Although this transaction's also going to be on testnet now, but it's not going to do anything, right? Because you can see the arguments here is hello people. There's a log, but even if we approve this transaction, nothing's going to happen. It's just a dummy transaction. However, because we actually logged the transaction ID right here, you can see it in our console. We can go to testnet.flowscan.org. Usually it's just flowscan.org, but you can go to testnet.flowscan.org, paste in the transaction ID, and click explore, and it'll actually give you all the information about this transaction. So look how helpful this is. Transaction ID, who the proposer, payer, and authorizers were. Here was the arguments. Here was the transaction code, and here are the events that were emitted. So pretty cool stuff. When it happened, the block. Yeah, exactly. So, like Biartek said, storage on Flow is incredibly cheap. So, like, basically, if a user has one flow, they're never ever gonna run into storage problems. Like, literally, if they have one
Flow,
flow,
man.
they'll never run into problems. But hopefully that doesn't change because they submitted a proposal to change that. But we'll get time. Yeah, Smix, I would just do some testing around that. Okay, so let's actually configure our application to read from testnet now. So what we can do is inside of our DApp, let's actually change our actions. Let's change say hello to actually read from testnet now. So let's import hello world from this address, our testnet contract address, and we're going to return hello world dot greeting, okay, which should be hello Emerald Academy, right? So if we refresh this page and we click say hello, there we go, hello Emerald Academy. So awesome, we just read from a contract on testnet. And now let's go ahead and run a transaction to change this greeting. So remember, we have to call this change greeting function. Well, let's do that in our code. Let's in here say, first of all, let's import hello world, our transaction, and we're going to say hello world dot change greeting, where the new greeting is user, right? I'm going to change it to hello people. Actually, I think to make things a little bit more interesting, why don't we go inside of our page and let's add a little input box that says let's make a variable called let greeting or let new greeting, and let's make an input where we bind the value of the input equal to new greeting like this, and type equals text. And when we what bind value means in Svelte is whatever we type into this input field, it's going to bind the value of that to this variable. So you'll see have this little input field, and if we type something into it, it's actually going to bind that to it's going to set this variable to the value of that. And then when we run the transaction, we can actually pass in the value of new greeting. And then that way, inside of our actions, we can take in the new greeting and pass that through right here instead of hard coding hello people. So this should be pretty interesting. So let's try it. So let's type in, we want to, right now it's giving us hello Emerald Academy, right? But let's say hello Yartech, right? If we run this transaction, now the argument is hello Bjartek, and it's calling our hello world.change greeting function on testnet. So let's approve it. We get the transaction ID here, so we can actually go ahead and paste that into testnet flow scan. And it usually gives you an error because it's a little buggy. It won't give you the code unless it's actually completed. So if you refresh enough, it should give you stuff. And now if we go ahead and run say hello again, it says hello Bjartek. So it successfully changed it on testnet. Hey. All right, so there you go. So one more thing I think is pretty interesting that I think is helpful for all of you for this hackathon. One thing I think is a great way to level up your DApp and makes your DApp look a lot cleaner is if you tell your application what's happening during the transaction, right? You say like, oh, the transaction's loading, the transaction's executing, the transaction's finalized. So that's a great addition for your project. So what you can actually do, I'll try and remember how to do this actually. God, I feel like such a noob. But I think you can say fcl.transaction and then pass in the transaction ID. Actually change this to say transaction ID so it's more clear. So we can pass in the transaction ID, a dot subscribe, and we can console.log the response. So if we add this code, you can now see that we can say, change it to hey there again, click run transaction, and approve. And we should see in the console that every time the transaction updates its status, it's going to log something to the console. So it's pending. Up now it's executed, and now it's almost finalized, and now it's sealed. So you can see that it slowly logged the status of the transaction as time went on. So if you want to, if you're like a front end whiz and you want to make your application look really nice, what you can do is add this piece of code and then set some variable that's equal to the response and display that on your front end. All right, so that's everything I have for all of you today. Again, my disclaimer was true, right? It's not a pretty application, but the goal was just to show you how to interact with the Flow blockchain. So I hope this was helpful. I also hope that maybe I interested some of you in Svelte, because I do think it's a lot better than React. But yeah, that's all I have for you. Yeah, it's great, Snowdot, to have this in your code. Thanks, Beartech. I'll try. BZ with the emo. Any questions about any of this? Oh, I see Monster Smasher's here. What's up, Monster Smasher? Yes, this is available on YouTube. Also, someone's ringing my doorbell. One sec, I'll be right back. Sorry, that was the it was the Girl Scouts actually. So I bought some cookies from them. It was funny because they were like, hey, like we have some cookies, like we're trying to support the Girl Scouts, and I was like, oh, that's so sweet. Like I'll take some Thin Mints, and they were like, and I was like, oh, how much is that? And they were like, oh, it's $12. And I was like, oh, you guys have change? And they were like, what? And I was like, do you have change? And they were like, I don't know. So I was like, okay, whatever. So I just like got my wallet and I like gave them a 20. And I was like, so do you guys have like $8? And they were like, oh, we don't think so. So I was like, okay, like, and then like I was trying to like do math in my head, and I was like having a panic attack because like when someone's at your door and like you like can't think straight. So I like literally couldn't think of like how to do math. So I gave them the 20, and then I was like, "Oh, you give me a 10 back, and then I'll give you 2 extra singles." And then I don't know. So it was like complicated math, but like I anyway forget it. So now I'm sitting here with Thin Mints, and I hope they don't have nuts in them because I'm allergic. But I don't know. Either way, I don't really care. I mean, listen, if they had learned to initialize the damn wallet, I would have just given them flow. But I guess they're two noobs. They're too newbie. I mean, you want NFTs? I got NFTs up the wazoo, but I don't think they want NFTs. So sorry. Anyways, that was what just happened to me. So any questions? I don't think. True, actually, true. So any questions about any of this? Will I do an Next.js version? No, I won't. Oh, but that's a good question though, because I promised I would show people some resources for that. So if you do want to learn some of the stuff in Next.js, you can actually again, our academy site is going over like a complete redo, so it's you can't really visit it right now. But we do have actually, I'll give you the old. This is like the old version of our site, and if you go to the challenges, you can actually see a Hello World application. So take a look at this one. This has a. Oh, also funny, Pelsy's here because Pelsy's the one that worked on this. Um, this is a sample application you can clone on your computer that shows you how to do all this in React as well. So in case you're curious, I would definitely check that out. All right, it looks like they don't have any nuts in them. That's pretty cool. I love Thin Mint so much. I'll send them your way, sweet. In chocolate is the worst flavor. You're banned. All right, you get a 5 minute timeout. You also agree with that? Wow, that's terrible, terrible, terrible. So, anyways, that's the end of the workshop. Um, I think James and Niche are starting their workshop in 3 minutes, so you should all get going and go to that. I want to play a league game. Yeah, anytime. Remember, any questions, just ask in the developer forum. Bye, everybody. Thanks, pal. Bye bye.